Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for Meet the Candidates Night. My name is Deepak Garg. I'm honored to serve as Vice President of Belmont Pan Asian Coalition, or BPAC. BPAC is one of the few grassroots, community-based Pan Asian organizations in Greater Boston area. Our organization is proud to represent the diverse membership with roots in Taiwan, China, Korea, India, Pakistan, Japan, Thailand, Nepal, Cambodia, the Philippines, and many other countries. Our mission is to celebrate and unify this diversity, promote civic engagement within our community, collaborate with other groups in Belmont and beyond. In that spirit, we are partnered with Belmont Chinese American Association for the past 4 years to host this town hall style Meet the Candidates event. This event has become only live voter event of its kind in Belmont, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to provide the platform. Tonight's format will be a town hall style discussion, where candidates will answer questions from the audience, but there will be no debate. No debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes for each response, and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Grace will be keeping time. She's a BPAC board member. Our virtual guest, please note that this is webinar. Jung will be monitoring the webinar, and you can submit your questions via the Q&A function. If you're in the room, please raise your hand to ask a question. I'll be moderating tonight's Select Board segment. After Julie Wu will be BPAC president, who will be moderating Ed Barker. Now I will hand it over to Dipali Trivedi, BPAC board member, to begin moderating the school committee portion. Over to you, Dipali.
And hello everyone. I'm Dipali Trivedi. Just to give you context, I am Belmont resident for 15 years. I have 2 kids, 13 and 16. So I'm very much interested as a resident as well as BPAC member in tonight's discussion. So first of all, I would like to start with give you opportunity to introduce yourself and give opening remarks. Maybe we can start with you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Brian Palmer, and I have lived in Belmont for 25 years. I have children that went to Belmont Public Schools. My grandchildren are in the Belmont Public Schools right now. In fact, all the way from pre-kindergarten through high school. So I'm well acquainted with the different schools. In fact, they've had a student in every school. And one of the things I really want to do is, in being on the school committee, is to engage the students, try to find ways that we can really get them involved. I remember when I was in college, Lewis Carroll wrote some stories called knots, and they were called knots because they're meant to be untied. And within there is embedded a large word problem, a mathematical problem. You can think of it as the word problem that high school students hate on steroids. And I was fascinated with him. I loved him. And it really excited me. I want to get our students engaged, all of our students, for whatever way it is. It'd be in the arts or it could be academics. And so in order to do that, I think we have limited funds and we need to use those funds in the best way we can. I'm an economist. I study choice under constraint. Our budgets are constrained. We need to figure out the best way to use those funds. Also, I'm concerned that we look forward to the future. Again, grandchildren in the schools are going to be in the schools for a while. I want to make sure that our schools stay well and that they stay strong. And lastly, I want to try to find other ways to get more revenue. Our schools are limited and, we have great facilities. Can we rent them out? Can we use some of the human capital, maybe not money, but other resources within our town to try to help and benefit the students in our school district? So I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Yeah, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Abed-Wood. I'm a Belmont mom and a nonprofit leader, and I'm running the school committee. I'd like to lead by just thanking you, Julie, Michael, and the Pan Asian Coalition for hosting this event. I think it is really valuable to have an in-person event. Plus side is that we're not going to have technical issues. If we do, we don't care. I really feel like our schools are at a pivotal moment, and now is the time for leadership to rise to the surface. We, we have two kids at Chenery. They're both boys, and I've seen where the school system is really supporting them and where we as a town can do better with our students. I currently work at LaSalle Village, which is a university-based retirement community where we really do blend lifelong learning with healthcare, with wellness, and with the sense of community. I excel at operational and financial leadership. I manage a multi-million-dollar budget for the community. I also am in the process of managing a fairly robust capital budget. We're in the process of a $150 million expansion project. I was selected at MIT to lead a university-wide technology transformation, to really look at the systems in the back office and how it could keep pace with the rapidly changing needs of the departments, labs, and centers across the university. And so I've managed large amounts of fiscal constraints balanced with ambitious, innovative goals, balanced with stakeholder well-being. And I feel like I'm uniquely positioned to be able to help the town of Belmont navigate how to use our funds wisely in the context of the school. Because, and I think I said this yesterday, our schools don't exist in a vacuum. Our schools have to exist within the reality of Belmont's economic reality, as well as what our students need from us. That comes to my second point. Our student needs are changing. The pandemic has really changed the learner profile, but technology is also reshaping learning each and every day. My kids are adept with technology to a point that I could not have imagined at their age. And so I really believe that to meet our students where they're at and to prepare them for the world ahead, we've invested in the vision of a graduate. We really need to be looking at how we can technologically support them, both from an efficiency perspective, but also to help them harness and leverage the technology that is available to them so that they're ready for the world ahead. If I am elected, I really will be prioritizing both excellence in academics as well as student well-being, because I believe the two really go hand in hand. And I really want our schools to remain a source of pride for all of Belmont, not just for parents. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Michael Todd Thompson. I'm a father of four. I have a third grader at the Butler Elementary. And I think, like a lot of parents in my community, I've been concerned about the budget challenges that our schools face, and how that's impacted their ability to address the mental health needs of our students and to serve them at a time when their social and emotional well-being is at a critical stage of development. I've been attending the school meetings for the past year to get a better sense of exactly how the committee members make the decisions that they do, and to get a firsthand look at some of the fiscal challenges that they face. In that time, I have watched the school committee wrestle and deliberate with the decisions that they've had to make, some of which have been very gut-wrenching. I've also watched some strong differing opinions on exactly how and what to prioritize when it comes to budgeting for our students' needs. I personally am a strong supporter of a services first approach for our students. Their academic needs equally alongside their mental health and their social and emotional wellness. This not only creates a school environment that I think our community aspires to, but I think it's fiscally responsible as well. It's far easier to treat a child in early childhood than it is to wait years and treat them after there are emotional dysregulation issues down the line. One way to look at this is in a sense of preventative medicine, right? So I have a science and medicine background. I have a doctorate in biomedical engineering and medical physics from the Harvard MIT Division of Health Sciences and Technology, and I have clinical experience with rotations at the West Roxbury VA and the Mass General IBD Clinic. I'm also running a co-campaign for a position on the Belmont Board of Health with a focus that is similarly positioned to examine mental health effects in the community, specifically for our students. I think that this is a great a great example of increased efficiency. And I think that the results that we get from partnering the Board of Health with the school committee towards mental health services for our students, gives us a better outcome than they would individually. Asking for your vote on April 1st. Thank you very much.
So I'll start with the questions. I'll start with you, Michael. The first question is that Select Board recently formed various committee like Warrant Committee, the Select Board Committee, budget across like the town, right? So how would you work with all these different parts of the governance to figure out the financial sustainability against the immediate goal for the education, right? Like how would you manage the budget so that we have long-term plan and the short-term plan for the innovative needs?
So I have to first acknowledge that I'm coming in as an outsider, so I'm not familiar with the budgeting process. So a bit of a disadvantage there, but I think it involves I think we have to ask some tough questions. First, I know that we have a lot of people who have expressed frustration with the way that the taxes are being used, right? So property taxes are an issue. We have vulnerable members in our community who can't afford to shoulder that tax burden. So we have to begin looking at ways to shift that tax burden into maybe commercial revenue. We need to look at partnerships with businesses, internships, community volunteerism. We need to look at utilizing municipal assets, perhaps using municipal buildings, renting them out, things like that. But sitting down and having conversations and opening up the process to the public, that transparency, I think, is something that the community wants, right? That's at least one of the reasons that I started attending the school committee meetings, was because I had no idea how they were making their decisions. And other parents expressed similar frustration when it came to, like, for example, last year, there was some staff reallocations and we wanted to understand why they reallocated staff. And we were told it came down to the budget. We asked to look at the budget to see if we could rearrange numbers, and that those numbers were closed to us. And we were told we would get a study that was done over the summer and a report back in the fall, and that didn't happen. And so this lack of transparency and accountability is something that has been increasingly frustrating for us. And so, yeah, I think all of this starts with having an open, transparent conversation amongst all of the boards, so that all of the town members can see exactly what's going on and have a say and have some sort of input.
Okay. So yeah, she will give you everybody counter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I go away like over time.
No, that's fine.
I'm wordy, so.
That's fine. Yeah, maybe the same question. And are you going to give heads up when 5 seconds before?
Yeah.
15.
seconds heads up.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. So I think it begins with transparency and open dialogue. And I'm gonna look at you with a camera.
Oh,
So yeah, it begins with transparency and open dialogue. The Warrant Committee and the Select Board are charged with understanding and owning the financial decisions for the town. And the school committee owns how to work within the context of the school budget. That doesn't mean that the school committee can't advocate for more. But ultimately, like I said, the school district exists within the economic reality of the town. So I think it's really important for there to be open, interactive dialogue around what's needed. It's sort of both a bottoms up and a top down approach, where the school district has to really articulate these are our non-discretionary expenses. So 75% of the school district's budget is salaries and wages, which is, it's fairly stable. Of the remaining, there's a large amount, the transportation fees, there's technology. So there's a limited amount of discretionary spending that's available to the school district. What I saw play out over the last year with this budget cycle is that the town had a number for the school district, and the school district had a hard time meeting that number. But ultimately, they met the 5.6% budget increase number that was given to the school district by the town. And what I saw on the part of the leadership for the district was an openness and a transparency around what the trade-offs were, what they needed to, what would have to be true to meet that 5.6%. And I think ultimately it comes down to those trade-offs. And when thinking about trade-offs, it's really important to focus on what drives the best student outcomes. So what's closest to the student. And I believe in more than just classroom outcomes, but ultimately you have to think about outcomes in the context of what will most benefit the student and balance between near-term outcomes as well as long-term efficiencies.
I've been on the warrant committee and seen this process work out, and it's a tough process. There are constraints and there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. There is a willingness on the administration to work within that. I think that the process is better now. One of the things that's important is also to look forward to the future. The numbers that are given in working between the school and the town are also taking into account what future is going to be, what the future costs are going to be. There are concerns and there are constraints, and I think we need to work within those. That's why I was hoping that we can find other sources of revenue to be creative or ways of getting resources for the schools that are not just monetary. The schools did get a 5.6% increase. The town only got 2.5%. How that goes in the future, it's going to be a tough ride because it's a division. But I think that the schools have the budget that they can work in and need to be creative to utilize those funds in the best way they can.
Say something about that. then.
1 minute. Yeah.
So I agree, we need to be creative, but I think that if there's a difference between being creative and trying to optimize within what you have, and also another approach, which is to look for, to dare to look for increasing the size of the pie that's the metaphor everybody uses when I talk with them. I think if we're just looking to optimize within what we have, we can do that, but you end up kind of just improving by increments, right? When you allow yourself to dream a little bit bigger, to be bolder, that's where I think we can take real leaps in what we can provide our students. And I think that's what the community wants. We know the budgets are going to go up. That's an inevitability. They always go up. We don't want to, burden our citizens, our townspeople. So you're right. We do need to find new sources of revenue, but we can't allow ourselves to be constrained by just optimization, this optimization ideology. I think we need to be bold. We need to be innovative. We need to be creative, and we need to strive to really dream big for our students.
Respond?
Yes.
I agree. We need to be innovative for students. There is no hidden money at town hall. There's not additional money that we say, you know what, we just need this, so we need it. I think that we need to be creative and trying to find other resources. It's not going to come from, is it going to be less policemen, less firefighters? The town has a budget that they need to satisfy as well. There's a total amount from the town. We need to do what we can, and we do need to be, again, creative and find what resources we can to help.
So you're right. There's not hidden.
I think we'll move on to the next topic.
Well, I just want to address the hidden money thing. There isn't hidden money, but for example, last year we got $250,000 more than we requested from the state. We also have an opioid settlement that we have for 20 years that, say, 2 years ago, we didn't realize we were going to have. So none of us are fortune tellers. There's money that comes down the line that we can't predict today that we might have tomorrow. And so if we have already in the pipeline ideas and programs that we're fighting for, right? We have to go out and we have to fight for this money. And we don't do it on the backs of our citizens, but you bootstrap your way up, and I think as a community, we have to show that we're willing to fight for every dollar that we can for our students. That's my approach.
Yes.
I should have, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
Being with the Board of Health, you should know that the opioid money is going to the Board of Health. That's what the town. The additional money the town got, it went, and there's an increase in mitigation fund. So all of these funds are indeed utilized. We can't just say we're going to use it because it's being used somewhere else. So again, we have a budget.
The opioid.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
And again, the town budget, we will discuss way more for the selectmen questions too, because it's a how the budget for the town is managed, but this is more about like school budget and what can we do to find most advantage from the money that we have allocated for the town budget, right, school budget. So we'll move on from the budget. I'm sure there will be, yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry.
I think it's all been said.
I know. Exactly. So that's why I'll start the next question with you, Zara. That federal education policy, right? It's always changing. Recently, there were a new policy that is released, the plan that is released, right? So how, if you are elected, how would you make sure that we are keeping up with that policy, and how how our students are keeping up with the policy that is released by the federal?
Well, this is a loaded question right now because I don't think anyone's able to keep up right now with federal policy. I work at a university, and we literally, our senior management team literally week after week sits there and tries to interpret the impact of things that are happening at the federal level on the university's funding and student enrollments on grants, on programs, etc. So I think there's no silver bullet, there's no magic answer here. I think it's important for both the school committee and the district leadership to be really plugged in. There's resources available to us through state associations, through peer associations, and interpreting that the best we can, and knowing that we have to be agile and nimble. It becomes really important for town government and town leadership across areas to have that trust and that transparency, because it's highly likely that while a lot of funding happens at the state level for education, there is going to be impacts that are felt. It's highly likely we will need to be nimble and responsive. So unfortunately, I don't have the answer other than we're going to have to break.
Try your best. Right?
Yeah.
Brian, do you want to add to that?
I concur. It's a challenge. It's hard to have a policy of the unknown. We can do whatever comes down. If there's less funding, we need to be able to be responsive to that. How are we going to respond to it? What can we go after? There's only so much copier paper you can't use or things like that. So you have to examine the budgets carefully and see how we can support them, and what, again, are there additional resources that we can find? Are there ways that we can help? Can we engage others to try to help out? We just got to do it the best we can with what we have.
So I'm going to be a little bit different here in this, that I'm going to say, I think that we can know what's happening, at least for the next few years. The administration in Washington wants to abolish the Department of Education. They've said as much. They have taken actions to initiate that procedure. They fired, was it 1,300 people about a week and a half ago? So it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and whether or not, I suppose, the courts are willing to stand up to the executive branch, and then whether the executive branch is going to actually follow what they say. Which this past week, they demonstrated that they are willing to take the let them enforce it approach. So if you know that that's what's going to happen, or you strongly suspect that's going to happen, then that's what you need to plan for. So I think we need to plan for the fact that, that's the environment that we're going to be in. So what does that mean? Well, we already know that they've cut funds, because the same questions face the Board of Health too,
Yeah.
right? So we already know that the states are going to be stretched to the limit across every department and every resource that they have had support from the federal government. So that means that every local municipal department, agency, committee, board, whatever you want to call them, is going to have to adapt to that and be agile and nimble and precise and really focused. And it's going to involve community coming together as well. I am a strong believer in a federal apparatus. I always keep I'm from Arizona originally, so I have a lot of people that call me statist. Fine. But sometimes they get it wrong. And this is one of those cases. And we've always and only ever had each other. right? Local community. And that's what where we're in now. We need to come together and we need our local school committee, our health board, all of it to work together with the community, and we need these agencies to work. So.
So, question, I'll start with you, Brian, that now coming back to the technology, right? And generative AI, tool like ChatGPT and Gorg, I heard. There's one camp thinks that just like student can use calculator, they should be allowed to use AI, right? While doing their homework, doing their classwork. Other camp thinks that if student will never even write poem and essays and calculate problems themselves, they will never be to that level where they can use the AI more adeptly. So what is your opinion there, and how would you look at AI in terms of education?
I think we need to look at it and figure out how to utilize it. I'm old enough to remember when calculators came out, and it was going to be a disaster because no one was ever going to learn their multiplication tables again. You know, unfortunately, a lot of kids don't know how to add and subtract and multiply. But it is something that, you know, for our children, we still had many, many hours of just asking them questions. And I think we need to learn how to use it. I have a sister-in-law who teaches English, and she says whenever they have an in-class essay, it's a disaster because a lot of the kids just don't know how to write. So I think we still need to be able to teach fundamentalist principles and have the kids be able to have an education. At the same time, we need to utilize all the technology and resources we have in ways to help kids learn and help them to think. So it's something we need to evolve with and not be afraid of, but we need to examine and figure out how to use it.
Sarah, you want to?
Sure. So who here remembers when they were a kid and they knew every single person's phone number by heart? So yes, I think you do end up atrophying parts of your brain, sadly. But that's not an excuse. I think AI is here to stay. And if we don't teach our children how to use it, they're going to abuse it. I see, and we're doing this at the undergraduate level. We need to start by educating our educators and teaching them what the best ways to use it are so that they can then pass it on. And I think we have to shift our thinking about what we're teaching our children. We're not teaching them how to write, how to read a particular book or a particular topic. We're teaching them how to think critically. We're teaching them how to read any text. We're teaching them how to synthesize information. And we're teaching them how to form their own opinions from synthesizing that information. And there are many ways that AI can help them along that path and actually accelerate their journey. And we have to teach them where it can't compensate for them. And honestly, I can tell pretty clearly, I use AI a lot just at work to generate communications. I can tell very clearly when something is written by ChatGPT versus a human being. And I think it's really important to show that to our kids, because the reality is they're going to go out into the world. They're going to have access to AI and they need to know how to use it and where it ends and where their uniqueness and their brilliance begins. So I think it does begin with the educators and helping them buy in and understand how to harness it.
So my first year at grad school at MIT, I was introduced to Google as a search engine by a friend, and we were doing assignments for a class. And everybody had answers to their problem set before I did. And I was like, how the hell are you guys getting these answers so fast? And of course, they were like looking them up through Google, and it just felt like cheating. And, because I was in the library and I was, doing all this stuff. And that was my first step into, the world of search engines and being able to just pull data down, right, immediately. I mentioned that because it was transformative and I learned how to use that in an ethical way. It felt unethical at the time. I think we're kind of at a similar, and of course, Google as a search engine went on to change the world. I think we're at a similar point with ChatGPT for our children. I think it's still too early to really say where it's headed and how it's going to change the landscape of academics, particularly early academics before college. But one thing I do know is that, and this has been true, I think, across the decades, when parents are involved in with their children and engage with their children in learning, those children do well. They do better, whether it's reading, whether it's in math, whether it's some interface with technology. I think that's where the difference is going to be. And I think Brian and Sarah, you both kind of address this, that's teaching our children how to use this technology responsibly, affirming our children's own brilliance, their own skill, and making sure that if they use AI technology, they do it ethically is going to be important. So.
Yes, I can totally see the trade-off, use of technology versus how to make sure that students learn creativity and mathematical foundation. So related question here is that how can we make sure, how would you make sure if you are elected that education or curriculum is AI ready, right? And should we have prompt engineering? Should we have anything that is related to AI where kids are exposed to, especially in high school, where they can get exposure to that and the curriculum is not behind in terms of technology?
Who's starting?
So, because you asked that question.
No, I was going to think while you guys went. I think Zara said a good point is if the educators understand what to do. So I think part of the teacher curriculum, the instructions to keep them up to speed is we need to be able to have ways of thinking about it, ways of doing it. I also, like Todd said, it's having the families engaged. Schools are a partner with the families. They're not taking over and doing raising the children. I think they can identify issues, they can help. I think it needs to be this partnership where we get engaged. So just getting, who is the expert? Who's going to know who does all this stuff? We need to find some way of instructing the people, instructing the school committee, instructing the teachers, instructing the parents. We all need to learn what's going to be the best way of doing that. And does that mean we need a subcommittee to find a person? I don't know. We'll have to figure out, but I think it really is something that we need to address.
I don't add to it, but anything, how can we make sure our curriculum is up to date with the current world?
Yeah, I think partnerships, we live in, I like to consider the sort of Boston areas like the Athens, the sort of Athens of the world, the modern Athens of the world. We have so many density-wise universities around us, wealth of experts in any subject area. So partnerships with universities, with the graduate students, the professors, the undergraduate students that are learning this would be helpful. If we want to form a committee, a subcommittee to address this. I think more broadly speaking, I think the school committee and the district in general need to have a more comprehensive policy around technology in general. I know Matt Kraft, who's a current school committee member, has been pushing for that. And I've been happy to see that while I've been sitting in the in the chairs in the meeting. So because technology is constantly outpacing the ability of teachers, and I think that's been true for a long time. So anything that we can do to better equip our teachers to stay informed and be able to help, not just for their instruction, but also help the students learn how to use the technology for success in school and work, but also in their social lives, right? Because we also know that things like AI and social media have some pretty devastating effects, in a social sense as well. And I think that's, for me, one of my larger concerns, right?
Sarah, do you want to add?
Sure, and I do think it goes back to, the school committee's role is really setting policies for the school district. And I do think a technology policy is really important and keeping that refreshed and continually updated because technology is outpacing our ability to keep up is really important. I do think it goes back to competencies and looking at the competencies we want to inculcate in our students and what skills do we want them to have both as they're navigating high school and beyond. What do we want to have them to have as they're ready for college or whatever path they choose? And I think rather than thinking about prompt engineering or AI readiness as a separate course, I think we need to think about it as a competency that's layered in every course. And that starts by educating faculty. I know we have curriculum designers. I know we have actually a project underway to examine the curriculum, to look at the competencies that are being introduced through the curriculum across disciplines, across subjects. And I think this is an important one.
I'll go to the next topic. Sorry.
Have audience questions as well.
Oh, you have an audience. We can start with audience questions. There's only one.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think the school committee's role in ensuring that all students in Belmont are receiving an equitable education, and what challenges in delivering and ensuring equity do you see in the district right now?
Who will start the question?
Yeah,
sure.
Go ahead, start.
Sure, I think so the question is a two-part question.
Question, yeah.
So what is the school committee's role in
Ensuring equitable education, and what challenges do you see that we're currently facing right now?
So I think that the school committee is their primary leaders in ensuring equitable, right? I mean, they're in charge of the entire district, right? So they should be on the forefront leading the push for equity in education. And I think one of the major challenges that we have right now is that we're along the lines that I was talking about earlier with mental health needs. The idea that families should be first and foremost tasked with providing mental health for their students before the schools is a complete failure on the part of the district and the school committees, because that is not an equitable situation, right? Most families, that is outside of their capacity to meet the needs for their children. I know for myself, I had 2 children on a wait list to see a therapist. One of them aged out before he was able to be seen. The other one was seen because COVID prioritized teen mental health as an emergency. So that we know is an issue that affects education. If a student is having a mental health crisis, they can't effectively learn. We know that the METCO students and their families have expressed dissatisfaction and frustration, and quite frankly, incidents of incidents of racism, and that is obviously going to affect their learning experience. In fact, when I went to the METCO, the meeting with the METCO families, some of the students said they felt like they were isolated. They were, one of the students directly said, we are not pets. They felt like they were singled out and set apart. And that is an issue that I think still is being addressed. So,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes, sorry, we are running out. Sorry.
So from my perspective, again, the school committee's role in equity, as in all other things, is to be the policy setting body and to help govern through that. I personally think equity is incredibly important, and it goes from equity around learning styles and learning capabilities, equity around socioeconomic status and access to funding and finance, and then equity around every aspect of differentiation that you can imagine for a student. I think as we start to think about our role as school committee, the challenge really becomes, where is there a funding gap? Where is there a curricular gap? And where is there a knowledge gap or an education gap where we can teach our educators how to handle particular learning styles, identify early interventions. I see the school district, again, prioritizing this in the new strategic plan through the multi-tiered system of supports, where they're really starting to look at what the tier 1 supports are, and where they can have early interventions to look at tier 2 and tier 3 supports. All of this takes time. I think we can talk about equity, we can talk about it as aspirational. Someone said to me this last week, I've had a lot of coffee with a lot of people these last few weeks, and I'm very caffeinated. This person said to me that, it's not about giving people equal access to opportunity, it's about giving people equal access to outcomes. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And one of the statements in the public school strategic plan reads, that we'll be successful when you can't judge a student's success by demographic measures. And I don't know if we'll ever get there, but we have to keep trying.
Equity is a hard thing. And I think it's important that we have resources that we focus on lots of different things. I know, for example, reading is one of the things where there's been a push in the current administration to get more kids involved in early reading, trying to use some of those resources that have been traditionally students been placed out of the district because we didn't have the resources, but investing in those resources so that makes it available for students to stay within the district and also offer specialized areas. There's been more math interventionists that have been this last budget to try to help students early on, as Mike was saying, just try to help them to develop. One of the things at least I think about education is what engages a student. We want to be able to supply things that makes everyone excited to learn. It may be the arts, it may be athletics, it may be academics, it may be something else, but trying to be able to find a way to have a standard of excellence for everyone would be great. So they feel like indeed they've succeeded.
Can I just say something though, about the MTSS and also just equity in general? So that is the MTSS is a term that gets used a lot, but I think parents hear it, it doesn't hold a lot of weight or meaning. And it oftentimes just translates to, you go deal with it first. And which is what I was sort of getting at when I said that the idea of, expecting families to shoulder some of the burden here. I think we need to have something that's more directly engaged with families. The other thing I wanted to just bring up is that the district's own assessment, if I recall correctly from a couple meetings ago, found that there was 30 to 40 students per grade that weren't meeting proficiencies. That's a huge number of students. It's like 300 to 400 students within the entire district. And I don't think we have any plan to deal with those students, right? So I don't know how we can start an equity discussion if we have no plan to deal with 300 to 400 students in our district who aren't meeting proficiency levels.
Yeah, they're all complex, difficult topics, and we need a little more time for that. But let's see if you have other questions online. Still, then we can.
At the moment.
Then we can. Yeah, anyone's here.
Anyone from the audience?
Questions for our candidates?
I have a question, actually. So just along the same lines of the equity question, we have a new hire, the new DEI director. And one of the concerns is whether that position is going to be kept funded. So I guess I'd like to ask, do you support keeping that position and keeping it funded?
That's an easy one. I think it was an important, I think it was a statement in and of itself for the school district to move forward with making that hire in our current political landscape, and I applaud them. I know in conversations I've had as part of the Strategic Advisory Council for the school district, that it's now a DEIW role. So
Right.
well-being has been added to it. And the goal really is to help have that role be more of a support system for overall well-being. And honestly, how can inclusion, being welcoming, looking at well-being for the community as a whole, think it's hard to find fault with that position. What I'm interested to see, and I'm looking forward to see if I get elected or otherwise, is how that role would integrate with the, with the counselors, with the other support services we have in place for student well-being, for mental health, et cetera, so we can see how it forms a cohesive whole. So more shall be revealed from my perspective.
I think I think it was great. The expansion, I think, is wonderful. I mean, this is a resource. We should use all available resources we have available to us. And this is something that we have and we should utilize. You know, if we don't use it, then that's probably our fault. If we can use it and find ways of being well-being and helping with every way she can, I think that's terrific.
Yeah, of course, right, I mean, anyone that comes forward and says we need to get rid of a DEI, a DIW, I guess in this case. I have some words for them that I probably can't share on this thing, but yeah, of course I support. Yeah, we need that position. And I fully support that. And yeah.
Any other question, Sean? Yeah, maybe we should,
Anything else?
yeah.
Actually,
Oh.
we are going to be, hi, I'm John Yue, I'm on the committee. We are going to be a group of 6, and whoever that's elected have to be working with others. Would you say something nice about your other 2 candidates, please?
Oh, I love that.
Great. Can I start? Okay, we'll take one at a time. I think Sarah has incredible understanding and done a lot of homework on all these things. She's got a lot of experience and is well thought through them. I thought talking about your sons and their learning styles last night at in the League of Women Voters was terrific, showing again how you engage different students, identifying them. I thought that was really good. And Todd, I think his enthusiasm and his sincerity is great. Afterwards, Todd has texted us and congratulated us on how we've done. I think he's just very sincere and really has a lot of good ideas. And I think it's terrific that we're all engaged together.
Should I go next? So Brian, I think you're incredibly measured. I think your experience as a parent and a grandparent and the level of perspective you bring is, as the only non-parent member of the school committee, I think you bring a really valuable perspective in terms of what I really think we need to be doing, which is thinking about a sustainable long game. I think your warrant committee experience is also invaluable, and you seem like a really good human being. Todd, likewise, you seem like a really good human being. Your passion, your commitment, and your energy and drive that you've brought not just to this election, but to every step of the way leading up to it, starting with your attendance at school committee meetings way back when, shows that you're not just talk. You really do believe in everything you're doing and saying. So I commend you for that.
So Brian, you and I have sat down together and had coffee and talked, and I have been just really impressed. You're intelligent, you've got wisdom, you're kind, and I've just been fascinated at your ability to really to break down some of the challenging problems that we are facing, and to do it in a way that's very practical, but also that keeps our kids centered, right? You've also been very kind to me personally. And I really appreciate that as well. So I also, I happen to know, Julie Crockett, and she has wonderful things that she said about you as well. So before you and I had met, so that was a great introduction as well. And Zara, you are just fantastic. You are gracious. You've been incredibly kind to me, and your work with the school committee has been fantastic. The strategic planning committee, I have been just astounded at your professionalism and everything that you've brought I think you are an excellent candidate for this position. I can't say enough about enough good things about you. Which is not a slight on your part at all. But yeah. And I just wanted to thank you for all the kind things that you've said to me, just in private, and your encouragements. So I can tell that you are also passionate and that you are just a wonderful parent. So thank you both. It's been really been a pleasure to run alongside of you, not against you, but alongside of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the.
And thank you for allowing us to speak to each other like that.
We'll start with the closing remarks. So we'll start with Michael.
Do we have time for one more question online?
You have one more question? Okay.
So Heather wants to know, I'd love to hear what they think we could do better, retain principals. So
Retaining,
it's a leadership turnover, so
yeah, if that's okay, take a minute, answer that, and then we can be closing questions.
Yeah. If you could keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we've seen, and as a parent, I've seen this as well, turnover at the principal level in multiple schools, and it's been very disruptive for my children. I don't think we're alone in that, and I've seen it through COVID and beyond in multiple industries. I think there has been a lot of burnout in positions that are community facing, where a lot of people are heavily dependent on those positions. Those positions have burnt out through COVID. I've seen leadership turnover in healthcare, in hospitality, in senior living, and in higher education as well. So I think we have to work with what we have today. I think we have a new district superintendent who's very measured, who's very substantive. I've seen at the Chenery, the principal and the assistant principals we have seem really committed. The conversations I've had have been really positive and have left me really impressed. So I think we have to look forward and know that we as a district went through, as did every other district, went through probably one of the hardest events to hit a community this century. And we're gonna have to get through it and then measure ourselves once we're on the other side.
One of the things that I want to commend our teachers and principals. I have a granddaughter in Wellington, and her teacher, I think it was a parent-teacher conference, had a picture of her and all these positive things about her, and just they do a really wonderful job. And I think we need to support them in ways we can. So if it's through the parent-teacher organizations or something, that we need to really try to find ways that we can support them and help them, and find out what it is that they are stressed with. I know in Chenery this year's budget, they're planning for an additional principal to try to help out and ease the load there. I think there's lots of different things to try to figure out to make everyone feel good about the situation. We've got some really committed people. There's some teachers that attend kids' sporting events and things like that after hours. There's really is a great group. And I think this administration hopefully gets an ear to the ground, but also if we can hear from the teachers, the principals, what it is that we can do and try to figure out how we can help.
So I agree with Sarah that our schools, our staff at the schools have, coming out of COVID, that was, global traumatic event. And that put a lot of stress on not just families, but on the teachers and the administrative staff as well. Those that are still with us are still dealing with that, and new administrative staff that are there are dealing with the after effects of that. I think when you have turnover at any business or endeavor, that's indicative that there are difficulties that need to be addressed. And so we need to ask the questions, the tough questions about how we can address those difficulties, how we can ease those burdens for the administrative staff as well. Because when they're feeling good about their job, then they're better able to serve our students. I think, Ryan, your idea of community involvement, getting to the teachers and the staff and asking how we can help them is a great one. I think, again, I have said that myself, the community stepping forward and cooperating with the schools and the school committee, working together that's how we solve these problems. That's how, by coming together and supporting one another. And that includes principals. Like we have a great principal at Butler. I know that there are some parents who've had clashes, but overall, our principal, Ms. Babson, is doing a great job under very difficult circumstances. And I'm sure that that is true for every school in the district. And, parents, please, if you can be, helpful in your schools, please step forward, volunteer. Principals, teachers, if you need help, please come forward and ask. We're here, we want to be a part of our children's learning experience and their education. So let us know how we can help.
Thank you everyone for amazing session. We'll start with closing remark. Brian, you can start with you.
Right. Great to be here. Thank you for taking the time and for making this venue possible. As you can see, there's 3 devoted candidates here. And I think we're all worried about and concerned about the children in our schools and making sure it's the best experience for them. We really want to keep Belmont schools the best they can be. Centers of excellence, trying to get for every student something where they really are excited about being in education. That may be different things, but if we can really focus on what we can do, utilizing the resources we have to the best possible way, looking to make sure we do that in a way that is sustainable for the future to keep everything in check. Be it concerns about an override in the future, be it concerns about federal funding. There's always going to be a bump in the road that we need to worry about. And I think if we can focus on what we can do for the students, managing our resources for the best possible way, and try to find other ways of getting resources for our schools, I think is really what we need to focus on. Thank you.
So I can talk about all the reasons I'm the right candidate for school committee. I've managed large budgets. I've had to make tough decisions. I've had to build community around these tough decisions and bring stakeholders along for the journey. But ultimately, what it comes down to is that I really want to help. I really believe in public education. I came to this country as an immigrant by myself when I was 18 for a college education. And since then, education has opened so many doors for me, my own, as well as working and learning. And I really do believe, hokey as it sounds, in education being the great leveler, being the American dream, being the thing that makes upward mobility possible, having come from a country where that was not the case, where public education does not exist. And I'm passionate about my kids, but I know that the work we do here as school committee members is not about today, it's about the long term. And so while I see lots of things that could be better today, I know that our school district exists within the context of the town, within the context of opportunity costs of every dollar we invest today has to either reduce expenses, improve student outcomes, or do something else that helps drive sustainability for our school system down the road. And so I'm here to help. I was asked by someone on school committee if I'd ever considered running for school committee, and I said, no, never. And now I can't remember a time that I wasn't running for school committee. I've been running for school committees and ingesting large amounts of caffeine with people I've never met before. But, I ask for your vote on April 1st so that I can help keep our schools strong, keep our schools sustainable, and keep them being something that we can truly be proud of as a town. Thank you.
So as a parent here in Belmont, I care about our children. I care about the schools. I see that our school system, like many others across the country, are moving towards a model where they offer mental health support service for the students instead of an individualized student by student, need by need service. And in order to provide that, we need to find a way to fund that. And I think that involves fighting for and scrapping for every dollar that we can and winning the small battles along the way so that we gain the momentum that we need to win the big ones. And the goal for that, of course, is that so that we can continue to dream big, to be bold and to lead the way for our students to continue to provide the academic excellence that Belmont schools are known for, and to give our children the opportunity to put their best foot forward going forward into the future. I hope I can count on your vote on April 1st. I'm asking for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I want to keep moving because probably the select board discussion is going to be long too. So we have your Ed Barker.
In other words.
Well, we just want to keep moving. We don't want to have too much lifetime. So so Ed Barker is running for trustees of the public library. He's not the only candidate. We had two candidates on Monday. Their schedules conflicted, so that's why we're doing it two separate nights. So Monday we had Tara Donner and Mark Carthy, thank you. And so actually the reporting from Monday is up now on Belmont Media under their election section. So you can look that up. And we're going to ask Ed the exact same questions that we asked Mark and Tara on Monday. Great. So just to reiterate what the trustees of the public library does. So they govern the library and advocate for it as a vital link between the community and the library. The role includes policymaking, strategic planning, hiring, budgeting, community engagement, and financial management. So I'll let you make your opening statement.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. Welcome my colleagues here this evening. I'm really excited about the opportunity to run for the Library Board of Trustees. It has been very exciting to see the building on Concord Avenue come out of the ground, and with it, the opportunity that we have to bring the whole town together in fundamentally important ways. Some of you may know that I've been very involved in the Belmont Library Foundation over the past several years. I've worked with other members of the Belmont community to raise over $5 million of private contributions to support the construction of the new building and help minimize the impact of that construction to taxpayers. I'm very proud of the work that I've had a chance to do with those folks. You may not know that professionally, I've also had experience as a board member and as a nonprofit executive. So I understand how you work with staff and how you work with the community to create meaningful outcomes for people, particularly on lean budgets. And obviously, we've had a lot of conversation about the importance of that right now, and that I think is a critical skill in terms of the library going forward. I've also been in the position of helping turn around an organization in a community-based organization, and those kinds of skills of making trade-offs and prioritization is absolutely critical. Were I to be elected to the Library Board of Trustees, I have three principal priorities for the work I want to do. First, we got to oversee a successful open. We got to make sure that we transfer the collection and we reestablish library operations efficiently. And then at the same time, continue the programs and the dynamic community engagement that we've come to be known for. Secondly, is to use the library resources strategically. The library budget is a very small part of the overall town budget, but it's critical in terms of making sure that that facility is open to the public as much or longer than many other parts of town. And then third, we got to tell the library story better. We got to use resources effectively to help engage residents and to Belmont library users to help them understand what the library is about and what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, so first question is, Could you describe one new or existing program you most look forward to bringing to the new library? In your view, how will that program serve the Belmont community, and how will you effectively employ available resources to operate the program?
How much time have we got for this? One of the challenges I face is that I have lots of great ideas for what we could do for the library. But fundamentally, the role of the library board is to oversee the staff, who's the entity that is responsible for doing that kind of thing, right? So it's a delicate balance. I recognize that from previous roles as a board member that you need to be, you need to stay in your lane. That said, I do think one of the things, policy is everything, right? And the priorities that we as a board set are what drive the staff to make the kinds of choices and prioritizations that they do. One of the things that I'd like to see the library do is, by virtue of the fact that the library has between 750 and 1,000 people a day coming through the building on average, I would really like to see the library become the place where other town resources are made available and accessible to people in the library. So for example, we have a social worker who works partially at the Beach Street Center and provides other services to town. Why couldn't we have that person available during story hour to provide resources for parents with young children about how to get either the services that they need or the kinds of support or that kind of thing? I see some select board members and candidates here. What if we had office hours on a regular basis in the library during the time when people are available in the library? Could we have services available to people, legal advisory, sort of consultative type services, notary public services, other things of that nature in the library when people are in those kinds of places? I think with limited budgets in the future, we got to figure out how do we take advantage of the opportunities to cross-fertilize and to bring resources to people more efficiently.
So Belmont is home to many languages and cultures. Sorry, I didn't write these.
It's okay.
How would you envision the new library's multicultural services? Do you see opportunities for the library to become a hub for cultural exchange in Belmont?
Short answer is yes. You may also not know that I used to be a foreign language instructor, a teacher myself. So language is not simply a facility of speaking to somebody in another way. It's about understanding a window into the world that they live in and the way that they understand and see the world. I think the library, by virtue of the fact that the library is the hub for the community, it needs to be reflective of the community. I had an experience the other day. I walked into the Lexington Public Library, and one of the first things I encountered there was a book island display thinger with 4 different languages, books in 4 different languages right there. It signaled a bunch of things about openness and welcoming to folks who were non-English speakers. It signaled that there was a collection in the building of books in a foreign language, and created a really powerful statement right there inside the front door. So I feel like that kind of thing is important. As we look forward, I think we should be thinking about things like trying to hire librarians who are multilingual, right? Trying to find opportunities to not only offer programs in additional languages, but to make those kinds of voices a part of the conversation about what the library is, how the library is directed, and what kinds of things we choose to offer and prioritize in the library space. So the library is an expression of and an extension of our community. So we absolutely need to make sure that it represents the community that we have.
Do you foresee any challenges in the operations of the new library, or in your potential role as a library trustee? How would you prepare for and overcome these challenges?
Well, everything's going to go great in the new building. It's going to be fantastic. No, I mean, obviously there are going to be some technical and logistical operational kinds of challenges that go with a brand new building and trying to learn the new systems. Anybody who's put a new air conditioner in their house or had anything like that realizes that there's kind of a shakedown period. So certainly that's going to be the case. As far as other challenges that the library is going to face, the library is a part of the broader town, right? We had a lot of conversation just a minute ago about the school budget. And the library budget does not exist outside of the town budget as well. And so if the town's in a really challenging position from a budgetary standpoint, I fully expect that the library is gonna, experience some of that as well. I do think that the library is in a slightly unique situation, similar in some ways to the schools, in that there is the ability to raise money to support some of the things the library does. Now, remember, the state has certain minimum requirements for hours, for opening, for number of days a week that it's open, hours that it's open, and budgetary allocation from the town to the library in order to remain certified. And if we lose our certification, then, that book that you really, really want to read that's in Woburn but not in Belmont, you can't borrow because we would not have access to the rest of the system. So it will be important for us to make sure that we maintain the ability to stay within those kinds of operational parameters. But as we think about things like services, or we think about programs, or we think about some of the kinds of things that we want the library to be able to offer the community, there is the ability to do some fundraising for some of those kinds of things. And I think that's one of the advantages that the library has over, say, the highway division or other things like that, right? You're not going to raise money for potholes, probably. But you might raise money for, youth programs or for some kind of support services for young people or for parents or something like that in the library. So, I mean, as a board member, as we think about those things, we'll have to address them as they come up and look creatively at the problem and find the solution that's going to fit. Yeah.
Great. Does anybody have any questions? For
Wow, you let me off easy.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yes, Paul.
What's your favorite book?
So I got asked this question at the Belmont Media Center, and my favorite book, I would have a hard time picking a favorite. I do have a book that haunts me, and it's a book called The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I don't know if anybody here's read it. It is a super powerful book. It is deeply disturbing. I think it sort of gets to that brainstem part of me that's a parent and that's living in uncertain times. And I literally broke down after I finished reading that book because it was just an emotional release. But to answer your question, yeah, that's one of my most memorable books. Yeah. Yes.
Actually, on Monday, we actually had a discussion about how library could potentially collaborate with the school system, as we know that the school currently are limited in its library services. And how would you envision working with the school system if you are elected as a trustee?
So I see that as one of the greatest opportunities, and I know that it comes with huge challenges, right? There are a lot of questions around the professional agreement that the schools have with staff that constrict or restrict the ability of non-school staff in the buildings and things of that nature. But I do think there's opportunities to work around that. So for example, here's an idea. If you're talking about programs I'd like to see, what if we had a writers in residence program at the library where we had, over the course of the year, somebody who was working with students in the library on, say, college essays, right? You got young people together starting in the fall. You had a writer in residence who was there to work with them over the course of their year. And then what if you had a prize at the end of the year for the best college essay, right? How might we provide services to those kids in the library that are not only an opportunity to provide them with tangible, real value, but also introduce them to the kinds of things that serve them well over the course of their life, the ability to write well, the ability to find mentorship in others who have skills, and the ability to translate a source, or a period of extended effort into something at the end that they can really be proud of. To me, that feels like where the library can actually provide tremendous value, and we could do something similar along with artists and an artist in residence program. We're going to have the new makerspace. What if we had an artist in residence program at the library that brought a different artist with a different medium in every month? And over the course of that month, there were workshops, master classes or other kinds of initiatives that would introduce people. And what if we did that in conjunction with the art program in the schools, right? So I think there's a tremendous opportunity for overlap in this place. It is not the library of your grandmother's era. We are not talking about and keep the card in the back of the book. We're talking about a dynamic space that's engaging people in a whole range of issues that are not always about books. Yes.
So, have you guys explored, partnering with, like local businesses, bookstores? I know there's a gaming store.
Yep.
To offer. So one of the things that, some of the parents that I've talked with, have expressed concern about is like lack of third spaces for kids
Yeah.
to hang out with.
Yeah.
Board gaming is really popular. So there are businesses that sell them and have some space for kids to play the games that they buy. Library was the place when I was growing up. I used to go there. So partnering with businesses that sell those, they can show up, demo their games. Bookstores can show up, demo their books, sell their books. Locally would be great because then it's promoting businesses. Is this something that you'd be open to, that you've discussed with people? Or?
Short answer, yes. I mean, imagine, so I think it would be really powerful for us to have a more active in-person author series, right? So that there's an opportunity to bring the bookstore together with the artist who's there to sell copies of the books. I mean, that should be a no-brainer. I know that a lot of those things have shifted to digital because it's more effective, cost-effective, and time efficient certainly for the author. My wife's currently working on a program that's bringing the author of the Who Would Win series. Perhaps any of you small children know these books about where they pit, an orca against a great white shark, and they, figure out who will win. But in the process, they're talking about, it's really like basic nonfiction for kids around how you, learn about what a great white is and what an orca is. And in the end, anyway, that's taking place we're working on bringing that to the library as a way of reaching beyond the individual school communities. And so that kind of opportunity absolutely makes a lot of sense. And it's a great way to extend the library's mandate beyond just things on site. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think
All right.
if you'd like to close.
Got what you need? Yeah. I mean, I'm a parent. I've got kids. My kids have showed me the libraries in a new way, and actually that I had forgotten and known once upon a time as a parent. I've been a board member, so I understand that distinction, the role that a board member plays as opposed to staff director. I have a background as a fundraiser, and I see incredible opportunity to create new and exciting opportunities for the library in the future. And if you want a creative problem solver for the library, I'm your candidate. Thanks.
Great one-man show. I know.
Okay.
You're one down.
Sure. I know I need water. Take 20.
Okay, moving on to select board. Okay, I'm going to talk about a little select board. For those who may not be familiar with what select board in Belmont is, a 3-member elected body that oversees the town government, appoints the town administrator, develops the town budget, prepares the town meeting warrant, and manages other essential tasks for the smooth operations of the town. Over to our Paul Joy and Taylor Yates, our 2 candidates. Why don't you introduce yourself, please? And opening statement.
Sure. All right. So, hey, everyone, and thank you to the Belmont Chinese American Association and the Belmont Pan Asian Coalition for hosting tonight's event. My name is Taylor Yates, and I'm a candidate for Belmont Select Board. I'm a father of 3, Belmont homeowner, and a small business owner. I moved to Belmont in 2018 and got involved in town government in 2019. I'm chair of the Vision 21 Committee, chair of the Planning Board, and a town meeting member. I'm running for Select Board to bring a positive vision for Belmont's future to its highest levels of leadership. I believe that Belmont's best days are ahead of us if we choose leaders who are willing to plan, collaborate, and implement the things that we need to do to ensure a brighter future. I have a track record of doing just that. I chaired the Yes for Appointed Treasurer campaign to stretch our tax dollars and succeeded with 70% of people voting in favor. We passed the MBTA Communities Act under my leadership with 93% of town meeting members voting in favor. And under my leadership, we have reformed the planning board to focus on economic development and expanding our commercial tax base. I've been honored by all the Belmontonians who have supported this campaign so far. I'm sure you've seen all those Yates for Belmont signs around town. I don't know if I've got as many as Zara, but I'm trying to keep up. I've knocked on just about 2,000 doors around town to talk face to face to our residents and hear their concerns directly from them. I've also received over 60 endorsements from town meeting members, members of the warrant committee, the school committee, former select board members, and other Belmont residents. I want to work with you all to build a better future for Belmont together. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Paul Joy. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee for the town of Belmont. I have also have three children in Belmont Public Schools. My wife is an immigrant, and I just want to thank, number one, Pan Asian Coalition, the Belmont Chinese American Association, and everybody that's here tonight that's obviously hosting this debate. Excuse me. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of as it relates to this campaign, and one of the things that I seek to bring to Belmont, is the salience and importance of economic development. You heard Taylor and I were both going to talk about this tonight, and I'm sure there's lots of questions associated with that. The BPAC is getting ready to ask all of us. But for me, economic development really isn't just zoning. It's really understanding where businesses are, what their challenges happen to be. Are they growing? Are they contracting? What are the labor challenges that they're facing? Because when you think about the cost of living affordability crisis that we have within our town and across all of Greater Boston, the only way that we're going to be able to grow out of this crisis is through the process of economic development. On the Economic Development Committee, we have built storefronts. We are incredibly proud of the fact that we are becoming more diverse as a business community. I am not going to call the old building the old CBS building. It is the Dr. Wu building. We're inviting a new Union Pharmacy into Belmont Center. We're inviting Karma into Belmont Center. I am tremendously proud of the fact that we are becoming a far more diverse community than perhaps even we were 3 or 4 years ago. And I ask for your vote on April 1st.
Talking about economic, let me ask both of you. I know economic growth and stability are crucial for Belmont's future. What specific actions do you plan to take, if elected, to ensure that Belmont remains financially strong and continues to grow?
Who do you want to go first?
Why don't Paul starts, because he was already talking about it.
I'll go ahead and go first. So number one, I have a 3-pronged plan for this. Number one, we have to work to make sure that we fill our empty storefronts. We have 35,000 square feet at Cushing Square that needs to be filled. We have a Dr. Wu building, like I mentioned, on Leonard Street that is in the process of hopefully being built within the next year. The best and cheapest way for us to do this is not to provide grant funding. It's actually to ease the requirements that we have on local business. For me, that means parking. We have a very restrictive, Taylor and I have worked on this together, a very restrictive parking bylaw that mandates that businesses require a certain number of parking to move to the town, that parking is available. I think we ought to be proactive and we ought to eliminate this off-street parking requirement. Number two, I think we ought to finally hire an economic development coordinator. This has been a 7-year recommendation from the 2009 Belmont Business Study. The third thing I would certainly do is to help reduce the amount of regulatory red tape. It's a 6-page or 8-page document that businesses have to go through in order to open within the town of Belmont. I think these are 3 common sense solutions that we can take right now that wouldn't cost a huge amount of dollars for us to be able to accelerate this process over the next 3 to 5 years.
How about you, Taylor?
Great, so I come at this in some ways very similar and a little bit different. So when I'm thinking about economic development, I'm thinking about a few things. One is expanding the commercial tax base so that we can ease the tax burden on residents. 2 is just treating our local businesses better. If we can save them some pain, we just should. It's the right thing to do. And then 3rd is creating business districts that improve our quality of life. Now, to me, the answer to that is a pyramid. The foundation of that is our zoning bylaw. It is really hard to make any progress on any kind of economic development unless we address our zoning bylaw, which is not really written to encourage it. Second is permitting. Once we allow for the kind of commercial space that we want, we have to make it easy to fill. And we, I don't know if it's because of atrophy or what, but for whatever reason, our permitting has not kept up with where we want it to be. And then the third is investment in our town centers. So we have received a lot of feedback on Belmont Center about what we can do to make it better. And some things, it's just short money, right? Like pick up the trash more frequently, right? Or change the color of the Christmas lights that we use each year to match the businesses. But some of it's going to be a bigger investment. And I think once we remove the red tape, we can justify spending to enhance the momentum we built.
Thank you. Well, talking about zoning and what both of you have spoken the importance of residential and commercial zoning around the town. How do you evaluate the current zoning situation and what changes would you advocate for to improve it if elected? You go ahead.
Sure. So let's start with let's just start with how our zoning bylaw is written. If you were to write a zoning bylaw today, you use this thing called a form-based code, where you basically just articulate what you want the outside of buildings to look like and really deregulate what happens inside. It's not quite so binary as that. There's a little bit of a middle ground, but most of our zoning bylaw does not use this, which makes it extremely difficult to use, extremely difficult to implement, and makes us less nimble in achieving our goals. So I would move towards a form-based code. I would support investing in moving the zoning bylaw towards a form-based code. And then also look strategically at our business districts for how we can grow mass. Like when we talk about growing the commercial tax base, practically speaking, what we mean is expanding the number of square feet of commercial space in Belmont. And we need to look at where that mass is appropriate, where that mass is not appropriate, and then what we mix within that to make those neighborhoods work.
You mentioned residential BPAC. So, we're facing an affordability crisis within the town, and the state is trying to deal with this basically from a top-down approach. This is the reason why we had MBTA 3A. This is the reason why we had ADU development and bylaw change. And this is why we're probably going to be looking at over the next 3 to 5 years, additional changes from the state down that's going to directly impact our residential tax base. We've got to predict and have a better understanding of what these changes are going to be. Because the reason why is we need to basically enable us to adapt residentially and commercially, perhaps to the changing nature of town funding, what this means for our overall budget, what this means for the commercial and residential tax base. And we ought to be more proactive in terms of protecting and growing our existing commercial base relative to what we presently have. Now, Taylor and I disagree with regard to Brighton Blanchard focus versus Belmont Center. The reason why I think we ought to have returned to Brighton Blanchard and return to the negotiation table first is a hypothesis that we will see more growth and development in that particular area than we will see with regard to Belmont Center. Belmont Center is a hard problem to crack. And I think Brighton Blanchard offers this town a greater opportunity for increased amounts of commercial development that will help us to grow the pie, as we all understand we need to do.
That was my next question.
Can I
Yeah, sure.
make a comment on that? So I just want to say like why we started with Belmont Center. It is by far our most well-studied business district. To say that there is more revenue elsewhere is pure conjecture. Because these other business districts have not been studied as well as Belmont Center. In fact, the only data that we collected on the Brighton Street area was on the Pure Code site, which showed that the proposal that was mooted would have barely broken even for the town. So I hear you. I drive down that street and I see there's all this space. Maybe we could fit something in here, but it's not supported by data yet. We went with the data when we decided to prioritize Belmont Center.
You both answered the next question. But move on to the next one. Belmont recently passed an override. What are your thoughts on the town's current financial situation? And how do you plan to address the financial challenges we face, especially with the possibility of another override in future? How soon do you think we may need another one and why?
Is it me?
Yes.
So the last override that we had was a year ago. It was an $8.4 million override, and it was a tough ask. There were a lot of good volunteers on both sides that supported and didn't support that particular override. I, for one, am tremendously happy that it did pass. I think had it failed, we would have seen cataclysmic cuts in a way that would have eliminated or reduced a wide number of positions that directly impact the safety and security of our residents. As it relates to the future, I do not believe that we should wait till the last possible minute to have a future override. I believe that we ought to provide some level of clarity so that we're not having an override vote in April, which will directly impact the budgetary discussions that we will have in May and June. We ought to provide more time so that we understand what the budget situation is ultimately going to be. So I would support overrides. You know, obviously, we cannot promise that we're never going to increase your taxes. Override should be a last resort, but they should occur and happen on November-based elections in a way that encourages the vast majority of voters to come out and have their voices be heard. And I think that will provide greater clarity and understanding and not require town departments to create two different budgets.
What you do?
Well, so I'll start by saying I did support the last override. And you know, one of my big takeaways from knocking on 2,000 doors is that the number one issue in this town, left, right, center, across generations, across socioeconomics, is taxes. We cannot ignore the fact that we are a very high tax town. And but we also have to be straight with voters about what the trade-off is between your taxes and the services that you want to receive. And I think, as you know, it's according to like what I've read from the Warrant Committee, it seems like we are heading towards an override in about 2 years. And we need to clearly explain to voters what is at stake and make sure that we're giving them the information that they need to make the trade-off that they feel is fair.
It's great. I know there are a lot of public questions. Why don't we switch a little over to John?
Well, the first question, how would you describe your relationship with other select board members?
Why don't you go ahead?
I will say this, you know, when Elizabeth Dion ran for select board, I think it was a breath of fresh air for this town. She met with me. I was then the incoming chair of the Economic Development Committee. She wanted to know what our ideas were. She wanted basically to unleash us and have us play a pivotal role in 2023 and into 2024 with regard to restaurant reform. I served as a member of the MBTA Advisory Committee for 2 years. You know, I helped unpack many of those particular issues that related to our ability to pass the MBTA 3A with the margin that Taylor mentioned. As it relates to Mr. Taylor, look, I think Mr. Taylor has been an unbelievably committed member of the select board. I think what he has done with regard to the Council on Aging is highly admirable. We've obviously have differences of opinion with regard to committee appointments, specifically to my committee as the Economic Development Committee. But I think he has learned in this role. I think he has progressed. I mean, I will say this, if you're listening, I saw him at Grove Park this other day and I said hello and he said hello back. And it was a very cordial exchange. I think the people that serve on our select board currently are amazing. They have absolutely committed themselves to the town of Belmont. And if duly elected, I would certainly look forward to continuing our relationship into the future.
Just to add for the public, he's talking about Matt Taylor. Matt Taylor, it's just.
I know, right? We gotta find like a Taylor Matt to complete that. So I have a great relationship with both Matt and Elizabeth. I often refer to Elizabeth as my partner in crime. And my wife asked me, Taylor, if you make it on the select board, because of open meeting law, you can't talk to Elizabeth anymore. Who are you going to talk to? So Elizabeth and I work very well together. Matt and I have a growing relationship because we It's because of the way I collaborate with people, right? Is I'm always looking for common ground, right? So I'm sure I don't agree with Elizabeth on everything. I'm sure I don't agree with Matt on everything, but where we have common ground, we should be working together to advance it. And outside of that, we should always be respectful to one another. We should work out our differences in a way that shows, that assumes positive intent, assumes that we are all trying to do what's right for Belmont. And so I look forward to potentially having a really productive relationship and continuing a really productive relationship with the other members of the select board.
Julie, yes, please.
So I had the pleasure of working with both of you on the MBTA communities law. So we worked together for 2 years on the committee until the end when you it's all a matter of public record that you were absent at the end. And I know like at the end, when we handed over to the planning board, then Taylor took charge along with the planning board, and you dealt with there were differences of opinion as far as what some of the people on our committee wanted to do, and you handled it by presenting 2 different plans to town meeting. So I guess my question is, being that the select board is a collaborative position, that you are, working within the select board, you're working with different bodies outside the select board. So I'm wondering how your approach during this whole MBTA communities process, how would that translate to how you're going to work as a select board member?
How about you?
Sure. So MBTA Communities Act was extremely hard, not just for Belmont, but across the state. And I'm really proud of the fact that we passed it by one of the largest margins of victory in the state, when towns are still struggling to just get something passed and are facing litigation from the state. One of the reasons that we're advancing the agenda that we're advancing today is because we passed that and we put it to bed. And so I see like a couple of things is really driving that success. So number one, as Julie mentioned, the 2-map approach I thought was brilliant. That was the brainchild of our town planner, Chris Ryan. And man, he just like nailed it. What a good suggestion, because it gave people an opportunity to say, hey, I'm willing to comply, but also consider like a more ambitious plan. The second thing, getting back to like the importance of forming relationships, our select board member, Roy Epstein, he reverse engineered the model that was created by the state so that we could iterate and iterate and iterate and ask lots of questions at the end and try different things at the end to be able to present something that we thought can get passed at town meeting. And then the third plank was just really doing the homework to be able to explain this to town meeting. I felt that everyone felt like they were getting the information they needed to make the right decision. So how does that translate to how I work on the select board? Again, you're going to hear me talk a lot about trade-offs for the rest of this campaign, and if I'm on the select board. So that giving people that choice, that is indicator number 1. 2 is having that relationship with other members of town who have skills that they can bring to the table and are willing to bring to the table because we have a good relationship. And then 3rd, doing really thorough homework and being able to share that out to the town.
I think for me, Julie, like one of the most challenging things about the MBTA process really was what happened at the end of July of 2024. And, we had differences of opinion, obviously, on the map that the committee put forward to the planning board. And I voted against that. And probably so, because the map ultimately changed. But one of the things that I found particularly challenging with this entire process was the fact that Jeff Birnbaum, who used to be the chair of the planning board, in the middle of this process was removed from the planning board because he didn't agree with the particular map that certain individuals wanted to put forward. And I found that that was an incredibly disruptive process, disruptive decision that ultimately, I'm glad the planning board was able to come together and present 2 different maps, but To do so by removing the chair of the planning board at that time, I felt was entirely irresponsible. As you know, as I stated then, and I continue to state today.
Well, continuing on with the processes. So town meeting is an important legislative body for the town. Can you talk about articles that you have championed, passed through town meeting, and what process have you followed?
You go ahead.
So, you know, one of the things that Taylor and I have both done relates to restaurants. And we had two articles associated with restaurants. When we came together, we were asked to do we were talking about restaurants, we had hotels, there was a wide number of issues that we were basically focused on in the beginning of 2023. But to see restaurant reform pass in November of 2024, you know, we held intensive discussions at the Economic Development Committee meeting. We had a joint meeting that we unanimously agreed on, I think it was 14, Taylor, different recommendations. And it passed overwhelmingly at town meeting. One of the things that I have championed, that Taylor may or may not agree with, is the fact that I think we ought to have a 5-person select board. Belmont is too large and too diverse to stick with a 3-person board. And while this effort didn't make it over the course of the last special town meeting, I do believe that through a charter process, we ought to return to this question. We are almost 30,000 people. The medium-sized select town with a 3-person select board is 3,800 people. Belmont deserves to have a more robust and more diverse select board to ensure that its residents are heard.
Yeah, so the first article that I got through town meeting, as Paul mentioned, was the restaurant reform, of allowing restaurants by right. And that was important because my contribution to that process was really auditing the zoning bylaw, going through all the commercial sections and identifying all the things that I thought were unnecessarily disruptive to opening a business in Belmont across several categories, including hotels, et cetera. And again, having done that thorough work was a key component of passing that by 96, with 96% of town meeting members in favor. You know, after that, again, you've heard me mention it before, the MBTA Communities Act passed with 93% of town meeting members in favor. And then most recently at our special town meeting, we passed our accessory dwelling unit bylaw with 83% of town meeting members in favor. And again, at each point here, it is so important to me to collaborate with folks and bring folks with different perspectives in together to get these decisive wins, because that is how we create this democratic durability for the policy trajectory we're on.
John, do you have it?
Okay, I just got to read it. Are you open to take a serious look at inefficient or wasteful spending in the town budget's money?
What you go.
Sure. Yeah, of course. I mean, if there's inefficiencies, let's definitely close that loophole, right? I think that I don't know that there's a ton of money in that exercise. I think right now we're in a position where we have to make hard choices. We have to choose what services we want and how much we're willing to pay for them. I don't think that there is just a pot of gold somewhere underneath town hall that we can just start rating for money.
You know, when I think about the work that I do as a consultant for, you know, corporations large and small, we're constantly looking at their technology opportunities that can improve the efficiencies of those corporations that we do projects for. And so you asked a question at the school committee portion of this event around artificial intelligence. We absolutely have to have an artificial intelligence technology committee or working group that allows us to better understand and implement these technologies in a fashion that will reduce costs. These technologies that we're seeing play across our entire economy are inherently deflationary. And so for us to ignore or not to implement them, maybe it's not a pot of gold at the underneath town hall, but it will certainly enable us to do more faster, quicker, better, and easier, including opening businesses, opening restaurants, doing all these things with the same number of individuals that we currently have employed. And as it relates maybe to even to the fields, we haven't talked about the fields yet. There are technologies available for us to measure field quality, to actually ensure that fields are taken care of, so that we don't have soccer coaches that get out there like they will in a few weeks and break their ankles. We absolutely have to utilize technology in a responsible fashion. And that's something that I think that this town needs to have a better focus on, certainly over the next 3 to 5 years.
All right, I'll read this out loud again. So what do you believe is your biggest achievement in Belmont so far as it related to the select board role, and what impact has it had?
Would you go, Paul?
Well, I think the biggest achievement that we've had, so when I first joined the Economic Development Committee, we were 5 people and we were meeting on Zoom and nobody came and we were talking to ourselves and what are we trying to get accomplished? And I think, we had a meeting a week ago last Thursday and we might have had, I believe, 60, 70, 80 people that were there. We took public testimony from 9 local businesses. We took public testimony from a landowner. We had probably the most robust set, and we'll have this discussed at our next meeting next week, but a tremendous discussion about the Belmont Center zoning project and the impact that it could potentially have to local business. I think that the salience of economic development is something that I am tremendously proud of. And I think as it relates to the future, with the potential of being able to serve on the economic development, the select board, it's something that I think that Belmont is ready for this type of leadership, this type of experience, in a way that perhaps even a year ago or 2 years ago, it wasn't quite ready for. So the fact that we're having this discussion and we're elevating this issue is tremendously important. And I put huge amounts of gratitude on local business, on every member of our committee, both past and present.
Might have to make a quick comment on that.
Yes.
So look, you've been hearing me talk about a lot about collaboration and its importance of leadership. One of my, if you watch me at the planning board, you watch me at town meeting, I'm often sharing the spotlight with other people, talking about the good work that other people do. And so I think, if we're talking about the salience of economic development, the person that really put that on the map was Elizabeth Dion. When she ran 2 years ago, she ran pretty much exclusively on that platform. And she pulled people like me on that bus and inspired me to do the work that I've been doing to advance that cause. So I'm not saying that, you didn't contribute, Paul, but I think give credit where it's due. In terms of my most important achievement, I'll the Yes for a Planning Treasurer campaign. Again, the number one issue that I hear from voters is taxes, right? And we owe it to them to professionally manage their tax dollars, to make sure that every tax dollar is stretched as far as it can go. When Floyd Carmon, who'd served the town ably for a very long time, retired, we were in a crisis because we didn't know who would replace him. It could have just been any Joe Schmo who got his neighbors to vote for him, whether or not he was qualified for the position. So I took up that cause to make sure that, again, our tax dollars are spent responsibly and professionally. And I'm really proud of doing that.
Do you have any?
Actually, is anybody in the audience question?
So I know both of you to some degree. So Taylor, we've been on Zooms together. You've said things that have been really helpful and informative to me. Paul, I've enjoyed I've heard some of your economic development, and you've been in my backyard with your kids during Porch Fest. So what I really need to know from each of you is there something systemic going on here in Belmont, and that's why things can't change? Like, I'm begging the city engineer to help fix White Street so that it's safer for all of us. And the feedback is, well, I decide what goes to the board of selectmen and I tell them, and I'm like, okay, so what do we need to do to get their attention? Like, should we all be sending emails to everybody on the board? Last year I did that with the new board member. I was not satisfied with the answer. Paul, you're saying you, for 7 years, you made a recommendation to have an economic manager, and that hasn't happened after 7 years of recommending something.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, if there's something systemic going on, what are you gonna do? What can you do?
How about you?
Yeah, so do you want me to talk about the crummy roads or do you want me to, economic development coordinator, right?
Bigger question.
Yeah, I mean, I can, let's start with, yeah.
And like begging to get help.
Yeah, look, so there actually is something systemic going on. So the town is resource constrained, right? Again, like I said, we're facing trade-offs. And part of that trade-off calculus is that the town is required to provide a lot of services. We are required to educate kids in town. We are required to provision police and fire services. And so the thing that takes it on the chin is the stuff that's not required, which are roads, right? Like there's no law that says your roads must not have potholes. And so yes, there is something systemic. It is and it's our fiscal challenges. And the same thing with economic development coordinator. You know, the good news is, by the way, on that front, we have hired another senior planner so that our director of planning and building can assume some of the roles of an economic development coordinator. But to get the extra headcount to hire an economic development coordinator requires money that the town just doesn't have.
Yeah.
So we're stretching the dollars we have as far as they can go. Yes, there is something systemic and it's money.
Yeah, well, and that's the first time I'm not pissed off. Because somebody told me the truth. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
I mean, I vote in every election, so
Yeah.
let's just be nicer to voters.
Yeah.
Let's answer people's questions thoroughly and appropriately when emails are sent. I'm hoping both of you are going to do that. Whomever's voted in, I hope you guys are gonna do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it also relates back to many of the, we have 63 committees and boards within this town. You know, that's a lot of individuals that are taking their time, they're meeting on a monthly basis or bi-monthly basis. Most of the time, most of those committee members are whether appointed by the select board or in some cases they're elected. It's very difficult to get the select board's attention to what it is that they're actually interested in caring about. I will never forget the first time I was on a Zoom meeting with the select board and I was very nervous and I raised my hand and they were like, who is this guy? And it was like, I'm Paul Joy and now I'm running for select board, but it's a challenging thing. So I think as it relates to our committees and boards, we ought to have a select board that better empowers all of our committees and boards. We ought to have like an annual summit for all of our committees and boards. We ought to have biannual check-ins, like what are your goals? What are you actually tracking to as it relates to your goals? I also think that finally, we're gonna have a process where we will have a real strategic plan for this town. I think in the past, we've only had maybe 2 strategic plans in the last 50 years. The committee that has been put together on the strategic plan is amazing. And so having those individuals kind of cross-filter across all of Belmont will enable us finally to move together in a way that addresses many of these systemic challenges. And that's something, you know, that we just simply haven't had, unfortunately, for quite a long time. Absolutely. So, sorry, you're like nodding up and down.
You're good, man.
You agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I was a champion of the comprehensive plan since 2019 when we tried to do it last time. And when I became chair of the planning board, I told the town planner, like, hey, we're finishing the MBTA Communities Act, but then we're not doing anything else until we get this underway.
And on that question, which I have is, I know the town community's involvement is with so many committees, there's always there, right? But their decision, their awareness, like she was not aware of what is the constraint there. What do you think, how you can bridge that gap so they are more aware of what is happening in the town? How about you, Carl?
So sorry, I didn't quite follow the question.
So
right?
like, we want to make sure like she was not aware of what was the reasoning behind her request. She was not satisfied with the answer. So what you both can do to bridge that gap with the common 25,000 people in the town where what is happening in the town, they should be aware of it. How can you make sure they are aware of what is happening in the town?
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because look, local government's not the only government that people engage with, right? There's state government, there's federal government. And you know, unfortunate reality is that even though local government's probably the most important one, it gets the least attention because it's probably like the least interesting of the three, right? There's no like big personalities and stuff throwing stuff at each other. So look, I think one of the things that I've been thinking about on the planning board and just haven't gotten to yet because you have a lot to do, is how we organize information on the website. So right now, like if I told you that like the information that you're looking for is on the website, that's technically true. I'm not sure you could find it. And part of that's just a function of we don't actually have like a systemic way that we post information on the town website that's really like logically thought out. Like what are people going to search for when they're looking for this particular piece of information? So we could probably do something there. That's actually a lot easier said than done. I do it a lot for my business and I spend a ton of time like organizing information so that people can find it when they need it. But unfortunately, it's a really tough problem to crack. And frankly, actually, organizations like this are critical in trying to get at that.
I think, one second, Paul, I think the answer is honest communication, which is what you did with me earlier. That's all I'm asking. The town engineer could have done that, right? So I think it's honest, clear communication. And if I send an email to to a board member, I don't want some vague baloney answer about, oh, I didn't realize this and I didn't think of that. Like, I just want a clear answer, right? Like, sorry, there was no override. Sorry, that's a bunch more money, but we're not focused on roads. That's how it is. That's what needs to be shared.
So one of the other things that I do beyond economic development is I serve as our practice coordinator for Belmont soccer. We have 1,300 kids that participate in Belmont soccer. We've got 93 teams. Twice a year, we coordinate with all of these coaches and all of you that are out there to basically help you figure out, well, what is your schedule going to be for the next 6 or 8 weeks? And it's a lot of emailing. We use spreadsheets. It's a complicated process. It's a very fair process. I actually think as it relates to this question and how do we better communicate, we just ought to communicate as much as possible. When the Belmont Voice came out, I was particularly proud to host them at an Economic Development Committee networking event. We helped them to fundraise. It has been a huge breath of fresh air to be able to pick up the paper every Friday and to read about all the various things that happen within the town. Because otherwise you just didn't know. For a couple of years, it was hard to figure out what was actually occurring. And that actually reduced, I think, the amount of trust that people had within the overall town. So that's a huge thing. The new website, I think, is a tremendous opportunity as well. The boards and committee chairs have an obligation or responsibility to communicate what it is that they're working on proactively so that residents understand the progress and the direction that they hope to take it. We certainly did that, with regard to last week's meeting. We broadcasted it out as far and wide as we possibly could, and that's why we had the audience that we did. Because many of those businesses felt that they weren't being listened to, and they felt like they were being excluded from the process. We got a letter from local businesses that said that this is something that they wanted to have a dialogue with the town, and that's something that we provided certainly for them.
Jen has one.
Some have said that 50% of the Belmont residents are either children or parents or grandparents of children. How would you, as a select board member, work with the school administration, the school committee, and provide the support the parents and children need?
So I have 3 kids in Belmont Public Schools. Our oldest is a 6th grader at Chenry. Our middle son is a 3rd grader at the Wellington, and we have a 1st grader at the Wellington as well. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of relates to something that our committee put together with the school committee, which is a virtual internship program for high school students. So we actually have embedded within the school department the opportunity for high school kids to come and actually do a virtual internship program where they're paid and they actually earn real life experience. And many of these students are working with local business as well as major multinational corporations. Motorola is one example, to actually do virtual technology, cybersecurity-based internships. As it relates to parents and to grandparents, one of the things that my late mother asked at last year was the question of whether or not the override had passed. We both worked on Mr. Liberty's campaign. She didn't give a hoot about Mr. Liberty. She wanted to know if the override had passed. And I think that that is the sense of spirit that I see across all of Belmont. Yes, we have a cost of living crisis, but I think for the most part, a lot of people are very interested in being able to support our schools and support certainly our town in that particular way.
Yeah, so my starting point, and actually this fall, I spent a lot of time talking to members of town government to understand kind of what their priorities are and what their jobs were and what they saw as the future of their work. And that included the school committee. And, the number one response is like, we just need someone to support us, to understand like what is we're trying to do and help us advance that goal. I think as we go through some pretty complicated times for the town budget and the schools in particular, I think just continuing that dialogue and saying, hey, what is it that you need? And like, I'm not promising I'm going to get it for you, but what is it that you're looking for? And let me see what I can do about it. And I think, we have made some critical progress in the budgeting process with the schools because we have an appointed treasurer now who is bringing some budgetary best practices. And we now do revenue first budgeting, where we talk about first, how much money are we going to have and then allocate it to departments, and also multi-year budgeting so that we can say to these departments that are making multi-year hiring decisions, here's how much money you actually have to hire the staff that you're going to hire.
Any other questions, anybody?
There is one person raised his hand online, Jeff Rubin.
That'll be the last question.
Hey, Jeff, you can speak now if you want to ask your question.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jeff Luby, Town Meeting Precinct 7, Warrant Committee member. Well, my question is, it's great following just what was said. Mine follows on fiscal discipline. So, for context, we did, I was fully supportive of the override like the two of you were, and the three of us definitely have talked about that. Out of that override, we needed everything but $900,000 to fill the hole. And that was quite a hole when I would say the row we dug, it's all of us. And, it's a very large override and we need almost every penny. And now we're going to try to use those dollars in future years. My question around fiscal discipline is, we're revenue first. Yes, that's a big push forward and I'm very happy we're doing that. We've also put in place more of a focus on responsibly using free cash, a certain amount for the budget each year. And if anything were to exceed that and our policy of reserves, that we would put that to stabilization funds, in particular capital with the Chenery and some of the other big projects coming. And this year was the first that we really focused on that because of the successful override, which completely thank the town voters for. But the concern I have going forward, especially for a select board, is as pressures become more and more on the budgets, in particular schools. I know that there's good faith negotiations going on with the unions that will take place, with the new contract. If there's, a settlement that puts budgetary pressures, unforeseen things, increases in out of district special education, and also town needs. We're starting to see that we've whittled the town budget so low that there's certain things now that we need that we have to afford outside the 2.5%. My concern is how are you going to handle those, especially when you're being asked to go outside of those prescriptive increases in the budget that we're setting in the multi-year forecast based on trying to stretch an override out, based on the revenue estimates. The pressures are going to get stronger, and how will you work to stay within budgets and not get ourselves back in the situation where we need almost $8 million to fill a gap that we created over several years? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, Jeff, you're Belmont's #1 fiscal whiz, so maybe we should be asking you the answer to this question. But like, so
I'm not running, you two are.
I know, right? So, look, maybe I can tell you like a couple of principles that guide how I think about spending. Number one, I do think we need to continue to hold the line on spending it for no other reason than taxpayers just really expected after the after the last override. But in terms of what's like the first dollar we defend, like what's the first dollar that we just refuse to cut? I think it's the investments that pay off over multiple years. So we're making a couple of those, particularly on the school side, to bring more kids back in district and provide more services for kids with special needs in district with better outcomes for the kids, saves the town a ton of money when like why not? Investments in the curriculum to update it so that we so that we actually have more kids ending up in the general population. And the same thing goes for some of the town departments, right? We've been investing a lot in the Office of Planning and Building because zoning is a critical component of getting our finances back on track. So again, I tend to defer to people who are more expert than I am on the budget. But if you want to know, like, what are my guiding principles? Those are what they are.
Go ahead.
It's good to hear from you, Jeff, and thanks for coming tonight. One of the things that we really felt was important with 3A was a fiscal impact analysis. And, we called for this. We ultimately hired RKD to do this work for us. It began, as you remember, probably in March of 2024, and they delivered their final report to us days before we had that vote. And we still haven't had a final readout from RKG as to questions that the public has related to the impact of 3A and also many of the other zoning initiatives that we seek to certainly do over the next 3 to 5 years and how that actually will impact the overall budget. I think as it relates to your questions around the importance of stabilization and building up free cash and the ability to invest in things that will last over the long term, we've got to, if we're making assumptions, it's fine to make assumptions, but we've got to do so in a way where our assumptions can be explored, where they can be tested, where they can be basically unpacked. And we have to allow the warrant committee and you, Jeff, I think this is really critical to actually have the opportunity to explore many of the initiatives that the executive side of the government is putting forward to ensure that the town has checks and balances. I think there ought to be some type of a subcommittee or some working group as it relates to the warrant committee that is independently looking at the analyses and the projections of all of the projects, whether it's Brighton Blanchard or Belmont Center, any of these other things, so that things don't happen in a vacuum. Right now, that's not quite happening that way. And I think that that's a disservice to residents, especially given the cost of the financial and cost of living crisis that we have. Thank you.
That's all for the questions tonight. How about Paul, you start with your closing statement? And then we'll move over to Taylor.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you once again, BPAC and John, and everybody that's here, certainly for allowing us to speak and hearing to what it is that we have to say. My name is Paul Joy. I'm the chair of our Economic Development Committee. I ask for your votes on April 1st. One of the reasons why I think that Belmont and moving to Belmont has been one of the best things that I've ever done in my entire life is the fact that our family feels supported. Our family feels welcome. My wife is an immigrant. She's going through a process to become a citizen. And I think that I was telling somebody earlier that if she does become a citizen, maybe she'll end up on town meeting as well. Which maybe that might, happen and occur. Mm-hmm. I think as it relates to this campaign, obviously Taylor and I are friends. We have certain amounts of differences of opinion. But you will always be able to call me. You'll always be able to tell me what you think, and you will always know where I stand on the issues. And I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, thanks again to the Belmont Chinese American Association and the Belmont Pan Asian Coalition for hosting tonight's event. I'm a firm believer in, I'm a firm believer that, my most important value is democracy, and you are all an indispensable part of it. Most of the important issues that we're going to be dealing with over the next 3 years are going to be related to zoning and planning. And I think it's important to round out the select board with someone who has zoning and planning experience so that we can get those initiatives right. I have that experience and will use it to prioritize productive reforms that protect the parts about Belmont we love the most. So I hope to earn your vote on April 1st so that we can build Belmont's future together.
Thank you. I want to thank all the candidates who were here and